So for those of you who have not joined our circle, make sure you do that. Just type DENNY, my first name, K, my initial, MIU is my last name, .com/circle. Okay, join a circle. Students ask great questions there, and I try to answer them. If I cannot answer them enough in words, I will actually do a video. So one of the things that I talk about in the circle is this thing called the Metabolical Syndrome, which is a new technical term, medical term that is the umbrella term for many disease, many what I call lifestyle disease. They're not cancer, they're not heart attack, they're heart attack, but it's really a lifestyle disease. It's fall under the umbrella metabolic disorder, and things like high blood pressure, hypertension, diabetic, high cholesterol, heart disease, thyroid, fatty liver, all kinds of things. I mean, it's incredible how encompassing that term is. When you get down to it, there's three elements to that. One is diet, just eating the wrong food at the wrong time. Okay, we talk about 3 meals a day. That's actually very modern. Didn't used to be like that. It used to be that you eat 1 or 2 meals a day and you're fasting the rest of the time. I actually fast from lunch to all the way to breakfast. So I don't do 8-16. I actually, I just eat for like 5 hours and then I fast all the way. And then just lifestyle, just how much you eat, what you eat, and when you eat. The second one is just exercise, the lack of exercise. But the most important one is really hormonal imbalance. Hormonal imbalance mainly from the fact that we are 24/7 under stress now. We have no way of turning on the parasympathetic nerve. It's always fight or flight, and that hormonal imbalance, the stress hormone coming from your adrenal gland, whether it's through the bloodstream like cortisol that pumps up your heart, or the adrenaline that goes out and shut down all your other biological functions, including your salivary gland, your reproductive system, your digestive system, your bladder, and you can shut it all down because they think that you're in danger. And in the process, it's creating all kinds of problems, like putting too much glucose into your body, thinking that you need it. Even does it at night. I'm not speaking as if I'm someone who have overcome this. I'm speaking because I have my own set of health problem. I talk about how I fast after 1 o'clock. I go to sleep, my glucose is normal. When I wake up, it's high because of all kinds of reasons, right? And so what's interesting is that when we talk about Qigong and when we're practicing Qi, the old word for Qi is different from the new word. The old word for Qi, and I talked about this before, is made of 2 words. One is no and one is fire. So 4,000, 5,000 years ago, the Chinese already figured out that hormonal imbalance. Sorry, the mic is in the back of my head. I only speak from the front of my head. Sorry about that. And they already figured out that our health is because hormonal imbalance, and it reflects into fire. So we talk about the fire in the liver, the fire in our heart, and the lack of fire in the kidney, and so forth and so on. It's all about fire, fire, fire. Because when the yin and the yang is out of balance, you have fire. And so all these things that we do, it seems like, what are you, like, what's all this? There doesn't seem to be any scientific aspect to it. Well, there might not be scientific in the context of modern science. But there is the experiential aspect from thousands and thousands of years of experience, of understanding that your health comes from a balance within yourself. Health comes a balance between you and the universe. Okay, that's why we're doing this. Okay, it's creating that balance between yin and yang, making sure that all our life's energy channel is clear of blockage. All right, so we continue. Now, today we're going to be doing stretching exercise. okay? Because we alternate stretching and breathing, stretching, breathing. I want to take a minute to talk about stretching exercise and how important it is that the stretching is a meditation by itself. So one of the students asked a very, very important question in the circle. And he says, Denny, you talk about pain and suffering. And you talk about how we should learn how to embrace pain, because pain is the physical pain, but suffering is a mental pain. But how do you actually do that? So I thought about it, and I can answer the questions in 2 hours, or I can answer the questions 3 minutes. And I keep thinking about what's the best way to really talk about the difference between pain and suffering. Because when we do stretching, that's the way to practice. The difference is between your spiral cord and your brain. Your brain is your thinking mind. And your spiral cord is as important a part of your central nervous system as the brain. It's the sensing brain. All your nerve system comes to your spine before it's delivered to the heart, to the brain. The brain is where we develop intellect, where we accumulate knowledge. So I thought the quickest way to explain the difference between your thinking brain and your sensing brain, the difference between pain and suffering, is to use the Bible. So the book of Genesis in the Old Testament talks about how God created the universe in 6 days. He actually started on a Sunday. He didn't start on Monday. Sunday is not the day of worship. Sunday is the beginning of a work day. So then on the 6th day, which is a Friday, he finished work. That's why Saturday is Sabbath. It's a day of rest. It's a day of worship. So on Friday, by the evening of Friday, he's done. God has done. God has created the 4 elements. God has created all the planets. God has created all the sentient beings and non-sentient beings. And God created human in his image. Which means that when God created Adam and Eve were spiritual beings. Because God is always a spiritual being. And he created them in his image. So they were supposed to be spiritual. God told Adam and Eve, and he said, now I've done all that for you. I had created all these plants. Some of them have leaves, some of them has grains, some of them has fruits. Your job is to care for these animals. And you eat the fruit and let them eat the leaves. In other words, be a good vegetarian. Don't eat them. They're your friends. But that's besides the point. Even today, many Christians are vegetarian, following the Bible. But then he says something very interesting and profound. He says, you can do anything you want in this realm. Be happy here. But there's one thing you cannot do. You cannot eat the fruit from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. That's in the Bible. Because if you do, you will die. That's also in the Bible. So you have to wonder, what's so wrong with the tree of the knowledge of good and evil? For that, you have to go to the Jewish version, the Hebrew version, because after all, this is the Old Testament. And you have to really examine what the Jewish scholar explains the meaning of the knowledge of good and evil. It turns out that good and evil is just a way of speaking. That's a very old Arabic way of speaking, that when you want to explain what's going on in the village, you start from the beginning of the village to the end. So when you want to explain everything, you would say good and evil, the two extremes. So the book of knowledge of good and evil just means the book of knowledge of everything, or just book of knowledge. But you still have to ask, what's so wrong with the book of knowledge that you couldn't eat the fruit from? You have to ask, right? Then you do what modern people do. You look at them on Wikipedia. What is knowledge? Well, according to Wikipedia, knowledge is accumulated experience, meaning that knowledge is something that you learn as you grow into your your existence. Things that you learn, like don't touch the hot stove, don't cross the street when there's a bus coming your way. It's the little pieces of not things that you learn. And as you accumulate those experience, like the childhood, you start to develop a sense of right and wrong. You start to develop a sense of identity. Who am I? Who are you? This is mine. This is not mine. In fact, if you study child physiology, they don't have that. They absolutely do not have a sense of self as they grow up. They don't understand what's theirs, what's not theirs, until they're 2 years old. That's why it's called Turbo 2. So what's wrong with that? It means that we're slowly developing this, what we call the thinking mind, this brain. The brain is coming into maturity. And as we do that, we develop attachment. Attachment meaning that it's clinging. The experience that we have that we like, and we like more of it. And we like it for a long time. We don't want to let go of that. At the same time, we develop a sense of dislike. The things that we don't like. Pain, we don't want that. We don't want pain. No, who wants pain? When pain comes, then you go to the next stage, which is called aversion. Oh, aversion means negative response. So the difference between pain and suffering is the difference between sensing and thinking. When God told Adam and Eve, and he says, don't eat from the tree of knowledge of everything, because if you do, you will die. Which means that when you develop this thinking mind, you would lose eternity. You would be forever trapped in cycle of samsara because you like this sensation so much. So in a spiritual practice, we have to learn to be emancipated from this suffering by focusing only on the sensing and not let the thinking part take over. So coming back to the question, how do you do that? When you sense the pain, you bring out the best in you, which is compassion, loving kindness, empathy, and equanimity. What's the difference between compassion and empathy? For those of you like me who are volunteers in various contexts, we have something called compassion fatigue, meaning that we care so much. Compassion is different from loving kindness. Compassion is like in the traditional. Okay, I don't want to be politically incorrect. In the traditional sense, compassion is like the father. Loving kindness is like mother. The mother will give you love unconditional. When you hurt yourself, you run to the mother. The mother will care for you. The father is the one that provides aid. Okay, he would put Band-Aid on you, but at the same time, he will scold you. Okay, don't do that again. So, as we grow up, we understand that. Empathy is compassion without judgment. You have to bring out the best in you. The way that you engage, embrace pain, and without it degenerating into suffering is through empathy. When the pain comes, you let it come. You engage it like the doorman would engage a visiting guest. You understand the pain. You observe the pain. You know where it comes from. You know how sharp it is. But you don't develop aversion. You don't let the brain take over. You just let the spine take over. Feel it, but don't judge it. Just let it. I feel you. I feel you. And then the pain will go away without it degenerating into suffering. It might not work in the beginning, but you keep at it, it will work. Using the body to understand pain and suffering is the beginning of understanding this pain and suffering in your mind. Okay? All right, so we're going to do that. It takes practice. Practice, okay? The old Jewish joke, I have lots of friends in college, in university when I was a professor who was Jewish. And I love that joke when the kids met the old Jewish man in Manhattan. He says, how do I get to Carnegie Hall? And the old man says, practice, practice, practice. Good morning, Josh.
Hey, Denny, what's going on?
Hey. You see, when you show up, everyone show up. We got
I'm an amplifier, I guess.
I know. It's 271. Okay, now it's time to ask questions. The one you asked before, I can't get to it. Okay.
Well, I just wanted to comment real quick that, that question you spent the most time on today is a really common question. And I really appreciate how you answered it in relation to the body. And I was like, why hasn't this been more addressed from the bodily perspective? Because in Buddhist circles, the body is so important, but that question is usually answered in terms of psychology.
Yes. And psychology is body. Psychology is just the brain. It's a thinking brain level. It's I think my take on it is everything to me in the end is an addiction of one sort or another. Whether you're addicted to alcohol or drug or any kind of substance, or you're addicted to your suffering. It's interesting that those who wants to rid themselves of suffering are the one who are attached to it. There's things that you don't like, but you always go back to it. I'm 65 years old. I have a lot of time practicing this one thing, which is to stay the heck away from negative people. Just stay away from them, because that's what they like. They like suffering. And when you're around them, then you have no choice but to suffer as well. Just stay away from that, because it's an addiction.
It is, and people bond on complaining. So that's the classic phrase: "Don't associate with fools, so associate with the wise." Right?
Now,
yeah.
Sorry, Josh.
Oh, I was just gonna say too that the way I often look at that question of pain and suffering is, well, to find out for ourselves, we can notice, okay, acknowledge the unpleasantness of it, and then how am I viewing the situation? How am I framing it? What is my outlook on it? And then what is my relationship to it? And just as importantly, how am I responding to this unpleasantness that I'm noticing? So those, it's not really answers, those are just questions to explore and practice.
Yeah, now Samantha asked a very important question. I want to come back to that because that's very dear to my heart, which is about caregiving to a negative person, right? Or even being a spouse to a negative person. How are you going to get away? I'll come back to that. But I want to stay with this idea of suffering as an addiction. So how do you rid yourself? How do you get rid of it? How do you stay away from that? How do you improve yourself so that you're not addicted to suffering anymore? So a long time ago, I studied the 12 steps of alcohol addiction, drug addictions, and so on. Because I used to, before the epidemic, I was able to be a volunteer in the prison. And prison of all places, 65% of the population is actually drug addict. They actually have unlimited access to drug in the prison. It's a crazy place. So I actually know about that, know a lot of people who work with addicts. So I studied the 12 steps. So there are two things about the 12 steps that are very important. And this is true even when you think, if you're willing to think of suffering as an addiction. The one thing is that the first step is to give up to the higher power. Now, of course, the way the 12 step was first explained is to give up to God. And then eventually they modify that to God as you know it. But it doesn't matter, that's just a name. But you got to give it up to a higher power. You have to acknowledge that it's our control. It's not something that you can do. So the idea of addressing suffering and depression and all that with just psychology, in other words, you think you can just handle this on your own? You are in a dream. You can't handle this with your brain. It's the brain that is causing the problem. You can't handle it with your brain. You got to tap into a higher power. Now, in my case, it's not so much about God or anything else, but that I understand that there's a higher power, and that higher power is my mind. I understand that in a rainy, that the sun shines even on a rainy day. That when it's cloudy out there, it is just a cloud. The sun is still there. Inside of me, there's a higher power, and I have to tap into that. So if you want to deal with addiction of any kind, you deal with that. You acknowledge that there is a higher power, and that higher power happens to be within you. It's compassion, it's loving kindness, it's empathy, it's equanimity. You just have to believe in that. The second thing you have to believe in is that you can't go cold turkey. That's ridiculous. You have to find something else as a replacement. So if you like the feeling of suffering, whether you acknowledge it or what, you can't just say, cut it off, no more, right? It would be like diving into the pool and thinking that you don't need to breathe anymore. That's crazy. That is absolutely crazy. Well, if the person is a negative spouse, just divorce her or him. There's a solution to that. It's just that when the father is negative and you have to deal with that, that's a separate story. I'm fun. I'm just trying to be funny. But the point is, you have to find something else. You have to replace it with something else. So if you're addicted to negativity, or if you're addicted to any kind of bad feeling, you have to find a way. And you just say, hey, I like this more. Yeah, let me have more of that. And so being surrounded with people like you, don't look at me and Josh. We are not the teacher here. We're just another fellow traveler. That's why I call it fellowship. We are just a fellow traveler. We might be ahead of you, might be behind you. You don't know. I don't know. But we happen to share this path together. Okay? This is important. And the idea that, hey, maybe, being able to sit properly, taking 3 deep breaths, understanding the body, sitting up properly, leaning back so I'm aligned with the universe. I get joy out of that. I get pleasure out of that. I get bliss out of that. That's a replacement. That's a replacement. It's like going to heroin to cigarette. I mean, eventually we like to be regular cigarette too, but it's so much better than heroin for now. Okay? And by the way, the thing about this is that it has no side effect. It doesn't go away. It's like you're taking a drug and there's side effect, and then eventually wear off. This doesn't wear off, So you got to find a replacement. Okay, now I really need to answer the question. And there's a whole bunch of questions. I just made a joke about spouse. Okay, spouse is within every spousal problem, the solution's embedded in the problem. You just have to solve it. But caregiver to a loved one, that's something else. Caregiver to a loved one, that's really something else. And by the way, it's very. I don't think you ever get the opportunity to care someone who's positive. All care receivers are negative because I talked about this before. That it's very difficult. In addition to all the physical suffering, the loss of mobility, the loss of respect and dignity. The idea that my father would go to the bathroom and I yelled at him afterwards, don't lock the door, And he said, oh, I'm going to take off my pants. If you don't want me to lock the door, what's up with you, right? The sense that person had completely lost dignity will make him a negative person. Absolutely will make him a negative person. There is no such thing as a positive care receiver. There is no such thing. You be that person. You be that person with your butt exposed to the outside world all the time. Okay? We go down to live with my daughter. You want my father to expose his genital to his granddaughter? That's never going to happen. So he's going to lock his door. Now, what if he falls down and hurt his head? Well, he's willing to live with that. So caregiving is a tough business. It's a really, really tough business because they are negative. They are negative by design. There is a temple about an hour away from where we live. And for some of you who have visited, it's called the 10,000 Buddha Temple. And when the abbot, the founding abbot, named it 10,000 Buddha, he gave a very, very interesting speech. You can look it up. And he says, the reason that I named this temple the 10,000 Buddha is, now in my word, not his word, he thinks that all positive energies are the same. There's no separation between one Buddha statue and another. You know, whether you're dealing with one Buddha to another, they're all the same. Positive energy. In other words, if I'm able to tap into my positive energy, the very presence of me would allow you to tap in your positive energy. You feel it. You feel it when you say there's light in you and it's helping me, because my positive energy resonates with your positive energy. Because energy is electromagnetic. All magnetism couples. It can couple even through the internet. Trust me. There's no boundary. But if all positive energy are coupled, then so does negative energy. So the thing you have to be aware of when you're caring for someone who is negative by design is that you have to understand that his or her negative energy can keep coupled to yours. And what happens is that when you're faced with the person you love and he's full of negative energy, that negative energy bring out the negative energy in you. That bring out the negative energy in you. It would be like that person that you care so much about is at the bottom of the pit, and you're trying to help the person by jumping into the pit. That's not going to work. That is not going to work. So all caregivers have to meditate for their own salvation. For their own salvation. That's why we have compassion fatigue. You have to learn how to use your breath and your body as the canary in the cave mine, so that when your negative energy rises, you might not know because your brain is not fast enough to know. You think your brain is powerful? Just imagine the evolution of our brain. Our brain didn't get developed until we start eating meat. When was fire invented? 150,000 years ago. A very short time compared to the entire. Our brain is not fast enough. It's not good enough to catch our emotion. You have to use your breath and your body. That's why when we do the breathing exercise, I often talk about in the third movement, I want to talk about now is the time when your breath is pronounced. You start to make the commitment of not moving your body. Because what I'm asking you to do is pay attention to your body. When your mind drifts away, you don't know. You have no idea what happened to your mind. Your mind could be miles away for 2 hours and you still don't know. When that person you care for is scolding you for your loving kindness, you're upset 2 hours later when it's already done. The person already forgot. Come on. He's suffering dementia. He's got two minutes worth of memory at best. He has completely forgot everything, but you're still thinking about it. You're still suffering. You are still suffering, right? Because you don't know how to use your body and your mind. You don't understand what emotional intelligence means. You don't understand that intelligence has two meanings. The most important meaning of intelligence is central intelligence agency, that it is actually giving you signal that you didn't understand. So meditate. You're in the right place. Learn to use your breath and your body as a precursor to your negative energy. And when your negative arises, you're the first to know. When I'm in front of my father, I'm so good at it. I'm in front of him. I'm paying attention to my breath. I don't let my emotion rises. And he's completely negative. right? I got into the door. I can tell. I can tell. He's at his bedroom. I'm in the beginning of the hallway. I could tell that he's in a bad mood. And it doesn't take much for him to be in a bad mood. He forgot where he hid his money. Now you think that people are stealing from him. So who would be stealing from him? Must be his wife. Okay? But, and then now he's completely in a bad mood. And so you walk up to him and don't argue with him. Don't argue with him. Okay? Don't argue with him. Just go with the flow. Don't let your bad emotion arise, because then you fall into the pit. Now you're together. What good is that? So it takes a lot of skill. It takes a lot of skill. But it comes down to this. How important is it? You say that this is your loved one. Do you love that person enough to practice? Practice, practice, practice. Okay? I'm not speaking as someone who has succeeded in what I do. I'm not speaking of that. I'm not speaking of that. I'm speaking as a failure. I tell you how much I fail. When we were down in AUA, my father is very happy. He's actually getting better and better. So he always wanted to make sure that he pays for everything. And I told him, no, don't worry about it. Let me take care of it. And to a point where I said, look, I made out a spreadsheet, Google Sheets, this is how I account for the number. When we get back, you can do it. No, right now he's in a mood where he's very, very concerned about his money, because what happens, and I finally figured out, is that he's switching back and forth. At times he knows who we are, at times he doesn't know who we are. So when he doesn't know who we are, he doesn't know why we're there. He doesn't know who we are, he doesn't know what we are after. So he thinks that we're after his money. So he hires money. And then when he figured out that he's surrounded by loved ones, he wanted to make use of the money. And I keep telling him, don't do that. And so we're in a fancy restaurant, and everybody's having a great time. He was having a great time. I'm having my glass of Pinot Noir. I was enjoying it. And all of a sudden he takes his money and put it on his table. And he says, I want to pay for this meal. And that one moment, I was too busy sipping my wine and not paying attention to my breath. I took his money and I swept it to the floor. I said, I told you not to do that. There were 12 people in the table. Half of them were his grandkids. I don't want to tell the rest of the story. I fail. We all fail, but we try. We keep trying. Because it is our loved one. Oh, he not only forgives, he forgot. No, he forgives. No, that's okay. I don't want to. Yeah.
Denny, this shows your human side, It's lovely and wonderful, I think, that it's real life. It's messy a lot of times. The teaching I got not too long ago, recently I guess, is that it is an energetic game, right? So we tend to match the energy of someone coming at us that needs help, because we feel that matching that same energy, well, then we can relate to them better. However, like we know, if we respond with that same energy, it's not that helpful. So what I've learned, or what I've taught, is that we focus on our response. So when someone's coming at us with a non-beneficial energy, instead of getting just entangled and rolled over and matched and equaling that energy, well, our attention stays on, okay, letting them finish, paying attention, not denying what's going on, but focusing mostly on our response. What we're going to bring to our response, what kind of energy. And it is an energetic game in a way. So that response we bring, if it's kind and compassionate, whatever beneficial energy, that's what we need to amplify to the response, I feel, and that's helpful. Now, it's just remembering that. If we can remember that, then there's a chance that it's more likely to happen.
Yes. Okay. All right. Whew. Thank you for all the comments. Thank you for all the comments. Okay, so we better wrap it up. It's pretty soon we'll be doing this for 8 hours. Okay, thanks everyone. Thanks for coming. This is a good mini retreat for me. Okay, all right.